Welcome back to another episode of Sports-Fixx. I'm your host, Carson Becker. We are back talking about another week of college football. We've had some really good bowl games so far. We have some more good bowl games coming up with the college football playoff, second round. First round was okay, wasn't great, but we kind of expected that with some of the Power 5 teams getting in, so group of 5 teams. So should be a better second round and all that. And I'll talk about all the games in this episode. First, I would like to say happy holidays. Hope everybody had a Merry Christmas, and I hope everybody is going to enjoy their New Year's with some football. And we'll see kind of what happens with the college football playoff. Should be a good second round here coming up in New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. So, bunch of bowl games have already concluded. First round of the playoffs also has been played. Not much excitement there. We had a little bit of excitement. Alabama comes back from 17 in Norman. A little bit of a terrible start for Alabama, but they end up coming back, looking pretty good. So they go on and win 34-24 in Norman. Good win for them. They're going to need to ride that into the next game where they got another very tough opponent in Indiana. You also had Miami and Texas A&M in a very much defensive battle where there was little to no offense throughout most of this game. Final score being 10-3, with Miami scoring a touchdown in the last 5 minutes of the game, and they win 10-3. Obviously, Texas A&M drives down the field, throws a pick in the end zone. Just not a whole lot of offense in that game. And then the other games were blowouts, which everyone kind of expected. Ole Miss blowing out Tulane, Oregon blowing out JMU and Eugene. But I will say I was pretty impressed with JMU's offense, putting up 34 points. I know Oregon doesn't typically have a good defense, and they really haven't had a good defense this year either. But JMU putting up 34, that's pretty impressive. So give props to them for making it somewhat of a good game where you see them actually putting up some points, unlike Tulane, who just could not do anything. And how many trick plays is Tulane going to do before they realize it's just not going to work? So that's my opinion on the first round. Wasn't great. Should be a lot better in the second round here. So looking forward to that here on New Year's Eve, New Year's Day, and should have a good one. Also had some solid bowl games this past weekend, including Georgia Tech BYU, which came down to the wire. BYU ends up intercepting the ball in the end zone, winning that one 25-21 as Georgia Tech fails to come back. Whole lot of controversy there with their time management and stuff. Just not a lot of good plays, I think, called at the end of that game where Georgia Tech could have got closer to the end zone and just kept throwing to the end zone. But anyway, BYU wins that one. They go on to win every game and beat every team except Texas Tech this year with the 2 losses to Texas Tech. Unfortunate for them, but they had a very good season as well. Penn State versus Clemson, 2 teams that were ranked in the top 5 preseason rankings, end up facing in the Bad Boy Mowers Pinstripe Bowl, which is obviously not a very good bowl. So after their disappointing seasons, they play in a relatively bad bowl game, and Penn State ends up winning this one 22-10, where this game honestly wasn't much impressive either. Kind of like their seasons. Cade Klubnik did not look good. Penn State looked better, but still not great. They did have their backup quarterback after obviously Drew Allar went down. So they did have him, but they'll look to build on what they did the rest of the season and try to do better next season. Penn State is usually pretty good every season. We've seen Penn State be pretty good. Kind of a down year for them. They'll probably be back next year where they'll be actually pretty good. And then if you missed it, Snoop Dogg had his own bowl game, which was very funny. Not 2 great teams playing in it, but it was impressive. Him catching that kickoff in the end zone, pretty athletic play, make the diving catch in the back of the end zone. So during his interview, so Snoop Dogg making some plays, probably the most impressive play of that game. If you watched that game, which many of you probably did not, but it was pretty fun to see Snoop Dogg on the sidelines, him in his own bowl game and all that. Him interviews were just so Snoop Dogg, and it was funny. So another good game there. And of course, during bowl season, everybody talks about the conference records during bowl season, right? So if you guys don't know, every conference plays a team from a different conference that's in a bowl game. So ACC will play like a Big Ten or an SEC or a Big 12 or something. They all play different conferences. Most of the time it's like Big Ten, SEC, ACC, Big Ten. So they kind of like mix it up. So everybody likes to see whose record is the best at the end of bowl season. So far, the ACC is 4-4 in bowl games with 4 games left, with the possibility of more with Miami. If they keep winning in the playoffs, they could have a couple more games, improve that record. The Big Ten is 5-0 so far in bowl games, with 7 games left, at least 7 games left, with Ohio State still in the playoff, Indiana still in the playoff, Oregon still in the playoff. So potential for some more games there. The SEC, a little bit surprising here, 2-4 in bowl games with at least 6 games left. Obviously, Alabama's still in the playoffs, Georgia's still in the playoffs, Ole Miss. So some teams there to get some more wins for the SEC, but the SEC fallen to a 2-4 record so far in bowl games. They still have a lot of games left, so we'll see. And it's probably more of the better teams. You got Vanderbilt still playing, Tennessee still playing, so some of those teams are still playing. And the Big 12 is sitting at 2-0 with 6 games left. Obviously, you got Texas Tech still in the playoff, could potentially go on a run and improve that record even more. So that's the conference records for the bowl games so far. Pretty good for most conferences. SEC, a little bit surprising there, but we'll see how they end up the rest of bowl season. So now let's get into the upcoming playoff games on New Year's Day and New Year's Eve. Of course, first you got New Year's Eve starting off with Miami versus Ohio State. Ohio State favored by 9.5 in this one. Should be a great game on New Year's Eve. Kickoff 7:30. Last time Ohio State played on New Year's Eve did not end well for Ohio State fans. Missing that kick as the ball dropped at the end of the game against Georgia. So not necessarily good thing for Ohio State, but we'll see how this game goes for them. Ohio State been one of the best teams in the country all year. They have a historically good defense. It's going to come into play a lot in this one. But last year we saw none of the teams that had the first round bye won, right? So all the teams that played in the first round went on to win because they kind of rode that momentum. Ohio State was one of those big teams that rode a lot of momentum from that Tennessee game from the first round last year. So interesting to see what happens now in the second round. Will we have a repeat of last year, or will we see some things different? I think we will see some things different in this game and some of the other games, but interesting to see who wins some of these games. I think Ohio State wins this one. Very close game. Miami fans talking about that 2002 national championship, 2003 national championship, where there was a questionable PI, whatever happened. They're still talking about that one. So they want revenge for that in this game, and it should be a really good one. I expect a lot of defense, and I expect Ohio State's offense to look a whole lot different with Ryan Day calling the plays in this one. So we'll see kind of what happens in this one. I think Ohio State wins this one in a close one. Next game, we have Oregon versus Texas Tech. Oregon favored by 2.5 in this one. Oregon coming off the win against JMU, where their offense firing on all cylinders. But little thing for me, their defense looks shaky. And if your defense is going to look shaky against JMU, it's going to look shaky against all the rest of these playoff teams. They're going to have to pick that up. I'm sure they game planned it all week. Dan Lanning is not going to want to go in and lose a game like this to Texas Tech. He's not going to want to lose any game, obviously, but he lives for the big games. Oregon coming off that big win, and Dan Lanning's not going to want to go and lose that game to Texas Tech, a team that's been very good this season. Well, Texas Tech, very good defense. We know Oregon's offense has been a little bit of a struggle this year at some times, and we know their defense has definitely struggled, especially in that JMU game there. So when Oregon scored under 20 points or less, they were in those close games. They barely beat an Iowa team that had a good defense, and they lost to an Indiana team that lost by 10 to an Indiana team that also has a very good defense. So when they're facing really good defenses, they haven't seemed to play nearly as well. So we'll see kind of how this one goes. I think it's going to be kind of a defensive battle, kind of like that Oregon-Indiana game early in the year. It was like 30-20, not a big scoring game. Texas Tech has maybe an even better defense than Indiana, so we'll see kind of how this one goes. I think Texas Tech's defense is too much for Oregon in this one. Becomes kind of like that Indiana game where they get in kind of a dogfight on defense, and they can't quite pull out enough points. Give me Texas Tech in a close one, in a low scoring defensive battle. Next, we have Alabama versus Indiana, another game that should be good. Indiana favored by 7 in this one, undefeated this year, haven't lost to anybody, Big Ten champs, first time in a very, very long time. This one's tough to pick. Alabama coming off a really good game against, okay game against Oklahoma, a revenge game for them earlier in the season where they went and lost in Tuscaloosa. They go and beat them in Norman this time. Indiana has a very good defense and enough offensive power to really keep up with these teams. So I'm looking at a very good game here. Alabama struggled against top defenses that like to blitz, which Indiana is definitely one of those teams where they showed that in the Big Ten championship where they blitzed a lot, got some sacks on Ohio State, rattled Julian Saint a little bit. And we've seen Ty Simpson get rattled a little bit when he gets blitzed like that. So we'll see kind of how this one goes. I think it's really going to ride on Alabama's offensive line, keeping pressure off Ty Simpson, trying to get that run game going as much as they can, take pressure off Ty Simpson. But I think Alabama does it enough. And Alabama always seems to go in, win the big games that they maybe shouldn't. The games that look like they're out, they look like they shouldn't win. They seem to win those games a lot of the time. So I think I'm going to take Alabama in this one. They're going to ride the hot hand after that huge comeback in Norman. They're going to keep riding that all the way through the playoffs, and they're going to send Cignetti home in this one. Give me Alabama in a close one. Last game is Ole Miss versus Georgia. Georgia favored by 6.5 in this one. These two teams played earlier in the year. Georgia won 43-35 in a game that Ole Miss would like to forget, especially that fourth quarter where they had a big lead. I think they got outscored 17-0 in the fourth quarter there. So a little bit of trouble there for Ole Miss. Georgia has been playing some of their best football, including that SEC championship where they went and shut down Alabama completely, and it just didn't even make the game close. Ole Miss playing without Lane Kiffin. I think it shows in this game. It wasn't going to show in the Tulane game, but I think it shows a little bit in this one. Coach doesn't take as many risks as Lane Kiffin. I think this one maybe gets a little out of hand, and I think Georgia wins by 2 scores. So those are my predictions for the playoff games coming up this week, here in a couple of days, so should have some good playoff games here. Again, I would like to say happy holidays to everyone. I hope you enjoy your New Year's as well. And that's all the games I'll talk about in this episode of Sports-Fixx. Thank you for watching. I am Carson Becker, and I will see you next time.